Rothschild control.
List of banks in possession and under control of the Rothschilds. More and more people are beginning to understand that 99% of the world population is controlled by an elite within the remaining 1%. But who controls this elite 1%? Is it merely a conspiracy theory that attributes this elite control to the Rothschilds? Seeing as allegedly the Rothschild family controls literally everything, including the elite 1%. Therefore, to shed further light on this assertion, let us consider it in the light of the following list, which should give irrefutable evidence. It only itemizes the banks in the possession of and under the control of the Rothschilds. Fasten your seatbelts, off we go!
After the revolution, from 1917, the Russian central bank was controlled by the Rothschilds a full 99 years. The treaty expired in 2016, but the Rothschilds de facto have continued to control the Russian central bank.
In light of these facts, it is certainly understandable that the Rothschild dynasty is, without doubt, the most powerful family behind the scenes throughout the world. Their estimated wealth amounts to $500 trillion. It is difficult to comprehend the immensity of this figure because 1 trillion equals 1 million times 1 million. $500 trillion would then be 500 million times $1 million, a 5 with 14 zeros. Thus, it is somewhat of an impossibility to validly verify the enormity of this estimated sum. Assets of this magnitude would be similar to all the drops of water in the oceans, rising and sinking in inconceivable amounts.
Rothschild control. Part 2. Virtually unknown to the general public is the fact that the US Federal Reserve Bank is a privately owned company. Similarly, the general public does not know that the Fed sits on its very own patch of land immune to the US laws. This privately owned company prints the money for the US government, which pays them interest for this favor. In turn, the Fed is controlled by the dynasties Rothschild, Rockefeller, and Morgan. The whole US is thus indebted to the Fed. Also, most people living in the US have no clue that the Internal Revenue Service, IRS, is a foreign agency. To be more accurate, the IRS is a foreign private corporation of the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and is the private army of the Federal Reserve Bank. Its main goal is to make sure the American people pay their tax and be good little slaves. In 1835, US President Andrew Jackson declared his disdain for the international bankers. "You are a den of vipers. I intend to root you out, and by the eternal God I will root you out. If people only understood the rank injustice of our monetary and banking system, there would be a revolution before morning." There followed an unsuccessful assassination attempt on President Jackson's life. Jackson had told his Vice President Martin Van Buren, "The bank, Mr. Van Buren, tries to kill me." This was the beginning of a pattern of intrigue that would plague the White House itself over the coming decades. Both US President Lincoln and John F. Kennedy have been murdered for trying to rid the country of banksters. The world's megabanks. There are two megabanks that offer loans to all countries around the planet, the World Bank and the IMF. The first one is jointly owned by the world's top banking families, with the Rothschilds at their very top, while the second is privately owned by the Rothschilds alone. These two megabanks offer loans to developing countries and use their almost impossible to pay back interests to get their hands on the real wealth, land and precious metals. But that's not all. An important part of their plan is to also exploit a country's natural resources, like petrol or gas, via their covertly owned companies, refine them, and sell them back to the same country, making huge profit. But in order for these companies to operate optimally, they need a solid infrastructure, which is usually lacking in the so-called developing countries. So, before the banksters even offer the almost impossible to pay back loans, they make sure that most of the money will be invested in, you've guessed it, infrastructure. These negotiations are carried out by the so-called economic hitmen, who succeed by handsomely rewarding, that is bribery, or threaten with death to those who are in the position to sell away their country. For more information on the subject, I suggest reading The Confessions of an Economic Hitman. The one bank that rules them all, the Bank for International Settlements, see BIS, based in Basel, is obviously controlled by the Rothschilds, and it is nicknamed the Tower of Basel. The true power of the Rothschilds goes far beyond the banking empire. If you're not yet amazed by the power of the Rothschilds, I know you are, please know that they are also behind all wars since Napoleon. That's when they have discovered just how profitable it is to finance both sides of war, and they've been doing it ever since. In 1849, Gretel Schnapper, the wife of Meyer Amschel Rothschild, stated, "If my sons did not want wars, there would be none." So the world is still at war because it is very, very profitable to the Rothschilds and their parasite Baxter bloodlines. And for as long as we will continue to use money, the world will never know peace. It is important to mention in this context that this is a sect-like secret society, not a Jewish conspiracy, as people imagine, and engage in racial discrimination. Even if these banksters would call themselves Jews, they are not, because the real Jew is strictly prohibited from the interest trading according to Leviticus 25, verse 37. You must not lend them money at interest or sell them food at a profit. It is shocking for many to find out that the United States of America is a corporation ruled from abroad. Its original name was the Virginia Company, and it was owned by the British Crown. It should not be mistaken for the Queen, which functions largely in a ceremonial capacity only. The British Crown donated the company by the Vatican, which gave the exploitation rights back to the Crown. The US presidents are appointed CEOs, and their business is to make money for the British Crown and the Vatican, who take their share of the profits each year. The British Crown currently rules the world from the 677-acre independent sovereign state known as the City of London. This other crown is comprised of a committee of 12 banks headed by the Bank of England. Guess who is controlling the Bank of England? Yep, the Rothschilds. In 1815, Nathan Meyer Rothschild made the following statement: I care not what puppet is placed upon the throne of England to rule the empire on which the sun never sets. The man who controls Britain's money supply controls the British Empire, and I control the British money supply. It's not just a conspiracy theory that the House of Rothschild is at the top of the power pyramid. If you research thoroughly, you will discover them as masterminds of the New World Order and as the complete domination of the worldwide agenda. They are behind the European Union and the Euro, and they are behind the idea of the North American Union and the Amero. They are controlling all the world's secret services, and their private army is NATO.